Well, hello and good morning to everyone out there who is also in the United States where I am. We've had a busy morning because we just watched 10 minutes of gameplay of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We saw both a lot and a little at the same time, I feel. At least that's kind of my initial impression. I mean, the video literally just wrapped up playing like, I don't know, 60 seconds ago, and I'm already jumping in front of my microphone and computer here to start talking to you guys about it. So I'm processing a lot, but I loved what we saw. I'm hoping you guys did too. Couple of questions about a few things, but in general, when you look at it as just the small window and glimpse into the world of Tears of the Kingdom that it was meant to be, I think it really showed us that they've added a lot of cool new things to this game. So it is, of course, very early where I am. It is now 7:21 in the morning because I am on the west coast of the States. So this video was made live, this 10 minutes of gameplay at 7 a.m. where I am locally. And it was like a 13-minute video because there's a little bit more than just the 10 minutes of gameplay, and Ainuma, of course, gave a little bit of an introduction beforehand. And so my brain is barely awake enough, I think, to like coherently just process everything I just saw in that 10 minutes, but I'm going to try to do the best that I can. Obviously, I'm incredibly excited for this game, you guys. I've been talking about it on a lot of videos. We know it's a bit divisive, and some folks have felt like it's not going to justify its new price, or that it's going to be too identical to Breath of the Wild, or Nintendo's been too mysterious with the marketing and all of these things. And I get it, and like I've said in a lot of ways, I also would have happily welcomed more marketing than they've been doing, but I just know that this game is going to deliver and be amazing. And while I almost do wish that we saw a little bit more than what this 10 minutes showed us, I still think it proved enough to me, at least, that this game is going to justify being a true sequel to Breath of the Wild, because there is a lot of crazy things they've added into this game that are almost asking the player to figure out how to do new things than just force-feeding or hand-feeding it to you. It really comes down to these new abilities that Link seems to have. And to be fair, they didn't give us any context to the new abilities. They did not discuss story or any of that, which is kind of what I expected. It was just gameplay, and I actually prefer that. But even though we don't know the context to his new abilities, they did highlight 4 specific new ones that he does have in this game that were not in Breath of the Wild and have massive implications to the things Link can do, the ability to build things or impact how his weapons play out, and then, of course, just traversing the world. All of these things are impacted by these new abilities. So I want to start off with the one takeaway that I would say is not a glowing positive thing, right? It's not even a negative either. It's just the one thing that I'm not, like, losing my mind with excitement over. And it's the fact that, you know, I think we just have to accept the fact that this game visually is identical to Breath of the Wild. And that's both good and not so good at the same time. It is good because Breath of the Wild, especially for when it came out in 2017 on a portable Switch console, is a beautiful game. It's still beautiful. The art style and the visual realization of the world and the characters and Link and all of that stuff is gorgeous. And the way the sunrises and sunsets look and these huge vistas you get. I mean, I've been replaying the game sporadically the past few weeks in preparation for Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, it is a gorgeous game, and it's a gorgeous world. So continuing that visual style and art style is obviously a great thing. And so in that respect, Tears of the Kingdom does look beautiful. But also, there are other elements, I think, of the visual style that maybe they were impressive in 2017, when this was the first time we've seen Zelda this way, but now it's 6 years later, and we're in the 7th year of the Switch, right? And so seeing the sequel look, I think, graphically identical, it's like it's not bad again, but it's also, I think some of the wow factor or the oomph is kind of taken out of it when you're like, oh, I'm just looking at the exact same kind of game, right? So again, I'm trying to not spin this as the most negative thing because the Switch is the Switch. It's not any more powerful. We haven't seen any word on if there's going to be a next-gen version of this or even a next-gen console soon enough for a next-gen version of this game to exist. So if you look at 2 Zelda games, one at the beginning and one at the ending of the exact same console, then yeah, it's just going to graphically look the same. It's not going to be 4K. It's not going to have higher resolution. I don't think it's in 60 frames per second, given the size of the world. I don't know how they could do that. So we just have to kind of accept that it is just visually identical to Breath of the Wild. Again, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's just a missing positive that they could have had. Imagine if they could have also shown, look at how much better looking this game is. On top of the new mechanics and the sky stuff, it's also visually, like, way better looking than the last game. They can't say that. That is a feather they don't have in their cap. So I just wanted to at least give you guys my opinion and my takeaway from the graphics of the game. But with that out of the way, let's just start talking about all of the very, very good stuff. Now, something Aonuma said, both at the beginning and the ending of this 10 minutes of gameplay, is he did confirm, without explaining what it means, he confirmed Hyrule is different. Yes, 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 I knew it, I was hoping for it, I was really begging Nintendo to have done something significant here. And again, we don't know details, but he did say in the very beginning, like, Hyrule is different, and I'm just paraphrasing, so forgive me. He basically was saying Hyrule is different, it's changed, and it's changed in a few ways, and if I spent time telling you all the ways it was changed, we'd be here all day or something like that. So he confirmed that in ways we don't yet know, the world map, in theory, should be different. And again, at the very, very ending of the 10 minutes, he also called Hyrule the unfamiliar Hyrule, right? Which echoes something from his quotes in this past week that I, of course, talked about on a video as well. It's a new Hyrule. It's an unfamiliar Hyrule. There's something different about it. I feel like I'm going to stick to the theory I've had for a couple of months now that time has probably passed in some significant way, you know? Enough time for the world and the topography and the layout of Hyrule to be kind of familiar, but also maybe very different. And so that's what I think he's talking about, and he basically confirmed it without showing us exactly what that means. Now, obviously, the most exciting part was when he started going over some of Link's new abilities. They covered 4 of Link's new abilities in this 10 minutes of gameplay, and they're all super damn cool in my opinion. He covered an ability called Recall, one called Fuse, one called Ultrahand, and one called Ascend. Now, the Recall, which is the first one, I found really fascinating, and we kind of expected this because we'd seen kind of glimpses in some of the little gameplay snippets we've seen where he seems to be reversing time, like focusing on an item and making an item reverse time in its own path, right? Like the spiky boulder going down a hill, Link seems to have made it go backwards. Now, the way he showed off Recall was very interesting because we started off just walking around on the world of Hyrule, and that's where it's like, oh, this game looks just like identical to Breath of the Wild, except Link has long hair, right? That was like all we got from it. But I did love that he panned up and showed us how we can see floating islands right above Link. You can just see floating what he called sky islands. And again, I'm just so excited for this whole thing, man. It's the number one thing that has me just dying to play this game. It's going to be so cool. And so he showed the Recall ability off by kind of halfway confirming another theory I had, right, that we'd seen from one of the trailers. So when he's looking up at an island, there's like a rock that's falling off an island, which is cool because I think the idea is, oh, sometimes rocks just naturally fall off of floating crags in the sky. And so he goes up to where the rock fell, and he uses Recall to make that thing reverse its course, which means it's going to take itself back up to the island it fell from. And what's cool about this is this shows us what we've seen in another gameplay snippet, a little boulder kind of rising up to one of the islands. And my theory was that it was kind of like an elevator or something, right? I was like, maybe these specific kinds of rocks are designed to be pathways up and down from Hyrule to the sky. And it's not exactly an elevator, but it is a way to travel up to the islands by using an ability that just reverses the time of a rock that fell from an island. So that is super cool, and we can't forget to mention, he did also state that there are several ways to get from Hyrule to the islands, and this is just one of them. So that's another thing that has me extremely excited. Then we get to my favorite part. He's on these huge, massive islands, and I've been speculating on this, and I've been calling out in some of my videos some of the sizes of the larger looking islands we've been able to see in the distance from some of the trailers. And I was like, man, there's some tiny islands, and there are some islands that look like puzzles or dungeons, but there are also some really massive looking islands. And they literally show us Link on a huge one with tons of things to run around on and multiple islands to probably jump across. It's so exciting. And when he took the Recall thing up, he also, like, he got up to the top, and on a small island, and I think he was on a small island, and then he jumped and took the sailcloth over to another island and landed on that island and was running around, and it was just that kind of traversal that I think I'm very excited for, and that I'm expecting to be a huge focus of the game. So to me, all the Sky Island stuff that they showed in the very beginning when he's standing on that huge one, it's like, man, part of me wishes that most of the game was the Sky stuff and not Hyrule Below, right? I'm just so much more excited for the Sky than Hyrule, because Hyrule, again, makes it feel like you're playing Breath of the Wild, whereas the Sky stuff makes it feel like you're playing something totally new. But either way, it's all very exciting, and so he's running around on the island. He's picking up a branch. He does use the branch to show us that, okay, weapon degradation and breaking is back. Maybe there's a repairability that they haven't talked about yet, but, you know, the standard breaking that we know is still here. He showed off a new enemy, and I forget what the enemy was called, but it's another kind of mechanical looking thing. So he's doing some normal stuff, and then he shows us the fuse ability by showing us that a weapon is about ready to break, but one of Link's new abilities on this gauntlet thing or whatever that Link has on his hand, that we don't know what it is yet, is the ability to combine items you're holding. And this is super cool. He used it to put a boulder at the end of a branch so it operates like a hammer. So that basically, it doesn't repair the broken branch, but it did turn it into a newer, stronger weapon, right? Like it refreshed it. So that is a super cool thing. He took another stick and added like a rake or something at the end of it. And so it became a really super long weapon you could stab from a distance. So when we see this in this simple context, we realize, okay, you're going to be able to make some wild stuff. Remember how in Breath of the Wild, we started seeing videos of people using the physics and the different like time abilities, the different Sheikah Slate abilities to do crazy things that we never would have thought were possible? Well, people are going to be making insane weapons like 6 months to a year after this game has been out. And so, weapons you're holding, you can use the fuse ability to combine all sorts of things. He put this like puffer mushroom on his shield that made smoke when it was attacked by an enemy. And so you can just see the variety of things you can play with. It's a whole new system that they will have built into this game that is going to change up the gameplay. And I think it's super cool. On top of that, you can fuse things to your arrows, for example. Like he showed putting a leaf on an arrow, and he showed you can put an eye, like a monster eyeball, from monster parts you pick up on an arrow, and it's going to become a heat-seeking or like a targeting arrow, and it's going to find enemies. And so there's obviously going to be a lot we can do with the fuse ability for the weapons and items Link is holding, and I just think it's super, super cool. Now, let's talk about the crafting. They did confirm crafting in a unique way is a part of this game. And it was introduced via another ability. It's not just crafting for crafting's sake. It seems like it's an ability specific to Link and his gauntlet thing. And they called it Ultrahand. At first I was confused. I was like, how is Ultrahand and Fuse any different? But I think the difference is Fuse is when you're holding something like a weapon and you fuse something else to a weapon you're holding. Ultrahand seems to be the ability to take other things just around the world and connect them together and build things. And so he used it to build a raft to cross a little lake or a river or something. You know, he took some pieces of wood and he put them together, and then there were these little propeller things. He attached those to the pieces of wood, and boom, you've got a floating wood boat with propellers that you can make move it forward by turning the fans on. And so that's great. Again, very simple, but we know you're going to be able to make more complicated stuff. And he did confirm that all of the previous contraptions we saw were crafted by someone just playing the game, which was the theory going around out there, that these aren't vehicles that were found, these are things you can craft. And man, the fact that you can use this to craft things that fly through the sky is so important to the variety that this is going to add to the game. You know, making a car and a vehicle to run around Hyrule is one thing. It's like, okay, that's cool, you can craft cars. But then when you see a hot air balloon, and it's like that changes the game so much to me. And that floating disc thing that's got the fans and he's using that to fly across the sky. I mean, this Ultrahand crafting thing is going to be another huge element, a crazy system they've built into this game that is going to vastly affect the gameplay to Tears of the Kingdom. Of course, the very last ability he showed was Ascend, something else we saw teased in one of the teasers. And we now know that Link can travel through any ceiling above him. Well, almost any ceiling. He said there are a few restrictions. probably going to be certain things we might come across in shrines or dungeons or whatever that looks like. But as far as I think anything out in like the world normally, if there is a ceiling above you, if it's a cave, if it's a building, whatever, Link, once he has the Ascend ability, can travel through anything above him and then come out on top the other side. This to me is unbelievably cool, and I guarantee you, along with the recall ability and the fusing Ultrahand ability to make the crafting Ultrahand ability to make vehicles to fly, this is also going to be something, the Ascend ability, that can probably give you certain paths into the skies, probably by by ascending above things, over and over and over again until you've made it high into the sky. I'm willing to bet there will be sections or areas of the game where you can do that. Something is almost connected from Hyrule all the way up into the sky, and I bet you can just use this ability, just bing, bang, boom, 1, 2, 3, all the way up until you get there. That's just a guess, but I think it's probably going to be there, and it's very exciting. And so I love the idea of this Ascend ability, man. I mean, I can see crazy ways for them to ask you to use this ability. And in a weird way, it reminds me of A Link Between Worlds, where you could turn into the painting on the wall and use that to travel like through cracks from room to room or into different areas you couldn't normally reach. Obviously it's different. Turning into a painting is different than, fusing through a ceiling. But I don't know if it makes sense to you guys. It's just a unique way that they baked into this game that allows you to traverse the world and experience the architecture and layout of the map in a different way, just like turning into a painting on a wall in A Link Between Worlds. That's how I read it. That's what it looks like to me. And it was so well used in A Link Between Worlds. And when we look at the scope of Tears of the Kingdom, I think they're going to use this Ascend ability to an even greater effect in this game. And then one of my favorite things they showed at the very end is what happens if you do fall off or jump off of any of the islands. And like we've been predicting, unlike Skyward Sword, you can just seamlessly go from the sky to Hyrule. I mean, that was almost obvious to me. I've talked about it in many of my videos. It just made sense that you're just going to be able to jump and dive all the way down to the ground. And he showed what that looked like. And it was so cool and so epic to just be floating, skydiving basically, just nonstop as the ground gets closer. You can move the camera around and see everything around you. And it's very different because in Skyward Sword, when you would dive off of something, you only had like 10 seconds of free fall before the game would reset and make you do it again. And you couldn't control anything. You just dive and you're falling, and in that 10-second window, you've got to press whatever button it is that calls your Loftwing to come save you. And if you're going to go from the sky to Hyrule below, you have to find certain warp points, and it's a loading thing, and there's no real control you have over it. Unless you jump off of your Loftwing to land on an island. To be fair, that is a place where you have control. But you don't have camera control in Skyward Sword. So they basically have just, taken all of the elements that Skyward Sword was playing with back in 2011 on the Wii, and they've just amped it up and modernized it and made it really impressive in Tears of the Kingdom. And I'm just so excited to mess with this because there's just a very epic, fun feeling of diving off of a cliff way high in the sky and just skydiving down to Hyrule below slowly and taking your time if you want and soaking in the views. I just think it's so neat. And so when he lands, that's basically where the gameplay demo ends, and so we've seen a bunch of new abilities of this game. Now, it is worth noting that they did confirm, I'm laughing to myself here, they did confirm that the Switch OLED, the Tears of the Kingdom themed Switch OLED, is real. So that leaked like a couple of months ago, and I made a video and everyone talked about it. And I was a little skeptical. I was like, man, these boxes could be faked. These decals could be faked so easily. But of course, I very much was open to the fact that they could be real as well. And clearly, it's all real. This thing does exist. It's coming out on April 28th. So it comes out actually a month from today, I'm realizing. Which makes it 2 weeks before Tears of the Kingdom itself comes out. So, I might make a different video talking more about this. This is probably the last themed Nintendo Switch we're going to get before the Switch 2 is revealed. That's my prediction. And we heard Nintendo talk about, our forecasts are low for this year, but we're going to raise them a little bit. And I speculated, I was like, maybe because they expect to sell a bunch of Zelda-themed OLEDs if that turns out to be real. Now that we know it's real, I'm wondering if that's probably why that number was changed. Either way, they did show us it's real, it's coming out on the 28th, and they showed us, what else did they show? Like a Switch carrying case that's Zelda themed and something else. Was there a Pro controller maybe? I can't remember if there... Oh, there was, yeah, there was a Pro controller too. And it looks like the Pro controller comes out the same day, I think, as the game on May 12th, if I'm looking at this right. So either way, they're obviously accessorizing the hell out of this. It's their last big game. It's their first $70 game. It's probably the swan song to the Switch, and the Switch 2 is going to be around the corner once Zelda's been on the market for a while and sold like 25 million copies. And so, yes, they're also trying to sell you one last new version of a Nintendo Switch before all is said and done. That's what I think this means. And so all in all, I mean, I found this very impressive. Would I have liked to see more? Yes, of course, I do want to see more. I don't think you can spoil a game of this size and scope, right, by showing us more. So 10 minutes to me was great, and I both feel satisfied, but I'm also left wanting more. So the question we ask ourselves is there any plans to show more of this game before the game releases on May 12th? You know, I'm kind of mixed on it. Going into this, I assumed that maybe they would show more. Now that I finished watching it, there's a chance that this is it, and they feel like they've done enough. They've got the Switch OLED coming. That's going to do its own form of marketing when it releases and people are talking about it. And so I don't know that they need to do a Nintendo Direct. I don't know that they need to do even another big trailer. I feel like maybe a trailer makes a little bit more sense. But I think that this is probably their plan, and maybe this isn't the beginning of a new marketing cycle like some people theorized. Maybe this is the end of the marketing cycle. They've given us 4 teasers. Now they've shown us 10 minutes of gameplay. They're going to release a Switch OLED in a month, and then we'll buy the game 2 weeks after that. That could be it. And if that's the case, I'm personally okay with it, because not only do I just know this game is going to be great, but these 4 new mechanics they showed off really leave a lot to the imagination. And they let us know, if you kind of use your imagination to fill in the gaps and apply this to a massive Hyrule Zelda world, where you've got Hyrule and the sky to play around with these new abilities, plus the fact we know that there are abilities they haven't still shown us, there's going to be so much to do in this game that it's like, yeah, you probably don't need to show more to let us know why this game is going to be epic. But, you know, if we're lucky, maybe they do decide to give us like a 20-minute Nintendo Direct in April. I don't think it's impossible. I just feel like my feeling has changed, and I think that we should prepare ourselves to accept the fact that maybe this is the last thing they're going to show us.